This is a scary experience that I had with my brother. On the night that this took place, my brother and I decided to go to watch a movie in the cinema. The only issue was the movie wasn't screening in our town, and we would have to drive kind of far. We didn't really care though, as we were young. I think I was about 16 and my brother was about 19. So when you're that age, you feel like you have all the time in the world, right? It was just over an hour's drive away, and the only showing was at night. We got there on time and we watched our movie, and then we had some dinner in a fast food place. We hit the road at about 11 p.m. and started making our way back home. It had been a great night. My brother was driving and I was in the passenger seat. We were using the satellite navigation system since we were driving along unfamiliar roads. Although it was kind of a long drive and late, we had plenty to talk about. We were talking about the movie and food for some reason. Just for context, we were driving back to our hometown in Kagawa from Tokushima. This is in Shikoku. The navigation system led us in a different direction to the way we came. It seemed to be taking us away from the highways. I felt like this was either to avoid an accident on the road or some late night reworks. It wasn't great though, because we were on National Route 11 and that ran alongside the sea. It was incredibly well lit and the roads were wide. Now we were going to be going through winding, narrow mountain passes. We ended up getting a little lost. Since my brother and I didn't exactly know the roads we were going down, we couldn't really figure out which way to go. I mean, the sat-nav wasn't exactly helping us, but as we were young, we felt as if the sat-nav knew better, so we made a choice to keep following its directions, and that turned out to be a very bad choice. We headed further into the darkness of the mountain, and away from the bright lights of the highway. We would try to reassure one another that we were probably being sent on a shortcut, and everything would be fine. We relied on the sat-nav's directions. The last of the streetlights disappeared. There was nothing but darkness ahead of us, and all around. I got worried, so I said to my brother, "This is a little odd, isn't it?" "Sat-nav says it's fine," my brother replied. He couldn't hide his look of concern from me, though. I could see it written all over his face. Dark thickets of trees towered either side of the road as our car chugged up higher into the mountains. Because we were now on uneven roads, the car was making some strange noises, which began to panic me. It sounded like the engine was struggling. I swallowed my pride and I said to my brother, "Hey bro, I gotta be honest with you, I'm getting a bit scared now. Why don't we make a U-turn and just get back on the highway?" My brother didn't respond. He was just fixated on the road ahead. I felt my heart begin to canter now. I asked him the same question again. He didn't say a word. I watched as he tightened his grip on the steering wheel. "Hey bro, come on, you're scaring me now." Just as I was about to ask him to make a U-turn for the third time, he drew in a deep breath and finally spoke. "Don't look behind. Something strange is going on." I felt my spine turn to ice. I didn't really even understand what he meant. Why was he being so vague? Instinctively, I wanted to look behind me, but I did as he asked. I just sat there in silent contemplation, unable to muster the courage to say another word. For a little while, I thought that my brother might be teasing me. We did like to prank one another, but neither of us had ever gone this far. It seemed way too serious. I looked over to him to see if he had a sly smirk on his face, but it looked like he was in the zone, incredibly focused and yet incredibly concerned. When I saw that look of determination on his face, I knew that there was something behind us. I noticed that we were speeding up now as well. Then my brother floored it. I felt myself slam backwards into the passenger seat with the force. It was terrifying. At any moment, another vehicle coming in the opposite direction could appear behind one of the bends in the mountain road. We were going way too fast. Whatever was behind us had forced my brother to drive incredibly recklessly. I went against my brother's orders, and I looked in the wing mirror to see if I could see what was behind us, but I couldn't see anything. Had my brother just gone completely mad? I was silent. I wanted to plead with him to slow down, but I didn't want to divert his attention from driving. Despite being on these dark, intricate roads, he drove faster and faster. I felt for sure that we were going to collide with something at any moment, so I kind of braced myself. I tensed up. Then suddenly, we were turning. We skidded into a hard left. And at that moment, I shut my eyes and I braced for impact. A second or two went by, and I slowly opened my eyes and looked over at my brother. His face had lost all of its color, and his knuckles were white. It was as if he was hanging onto that steering wheel for dear life. I couldn't make a sound. I just prayed that we would get back onto some streets with lights and away from whatever had scared my brother into driving like this. I shut my eyes again. Thinking back to that now, trying to remember how I felt, makes me feel for my brother. I mean, if I was feeling that scared, I bet he was feeling more, since he was the one driving. After a few moments, my brother said, "It's okay now. He's not following us anymore. I think we're good now." I opened my eyes to see streetlights in the distance. It was as if my prayers had been answered. We turned onto the national highway route, and I saw the sea. I knew that when I saw that, we were going to be fine. I cannot tell you how relieved I was at that point. Once relief settled in, a new feeling emerged. Curiosity. I needed to know what caused my brother to drive like our lives depended on it. I needed to know what had been following us. "Bro, what was behind us? Something really freaked you out, didn't it?" I asked him. My brother drew in a deep breath like he did before and said something like this. Pretty much as soon as we made that turn off of the mountain roads, I felt as if we were being tailed. I knew it because at one point the rear sensor went off and I didn't see anything behind us at first because of the dark, and that was when I realized that we were being tailed by a car without its lights on. I thought that whoever was driving must know these mountain roads well if they were confident enough to drive with no lights. At first I was glad to see that other cars were using these roads because I thought that the sat-nav might be right. He said that he felt uncomfortable that the car had its lights off. He wanted to pull over to let it pass as it was speeding up behind him now and then. However, the roads were way too narrow to allow him to pull off to the side to let the car behind pass. It was at that point he glanced in the rear view mirror to try and get a better look at the driver. He said that the sight of the driver nearly took his breath away. The driver had the interior light of his car on for a brief moment, and my brother could see his face. He was smiling. He said it wasn't a happy smile, but a disgusting grin that came with furrowed brows. That was the moment that my brother said he knew we had to get away from that car and its driver. That was the moment he started driving faster. It made sense to me now why, when I looked in the wing mirror, that I couldn't see anything. When my brother made that screeching left turn, the car behind apparently carried on going straight. We weren't sure if the driver tried to turn around to follow us, but we don't think that he did because my brother didn't see him again that night. We managed to arrive home safely without any further incident. That experience really had an effect on my brother. He became a lot more anxious and jumpy after that. He sought out some help though, and thankfully I don't think it has permanently scarred him or anything. My brother and I are both fine these days, doing well, no injuries. That was one scary night though. I torture myself every now and then when I think back to what that grinning driver's intentions were. I feel as if he was trying to shepherd us someplace, since he appeared to know the mountains well enough to drive in the dark. He wasn't scared of showing us his face, and that's pretty unnerving. Makes me feel as if something more than a robbery might have been on the cards, but hey, your guess is as good as mine. This happened about 3 years ago. I was with my wife and we were coming home from a long road trip. It was late and we were getting hungry, so we decided to pull into a family restaurant to get a bite to eat. My wife really needed to use the bathroom, so instead of reversing into the parking spot, I just pulled in head on. This is something I don't usually do, by the way. We had our meal and we headed back to the car. We got in and I started the ignition. I went to reverse out of the spot and my parking sensors started sounding off. I looked at the LCD screen on my dashboard and I saw a small child stood behind my car. He was squatting down as if he was drawing something on the ground. He seemed to be completely unaware of my car and my intentions to reverse. He didn't even notice it. It was strange. I mean, it was nearly midnight. What the hell was this kid doing playing out here that late? I didn't want to honk the horn. It seemed a little aggressive. I had no choice but to turn the engine off and step out of my car and ask the kid to move out of the way. I got out and walked to the rear of my car, but I couldn't see the kid anywhere. Damn kid. I figured he might be trying to prank me, waiting for me to get out of the car and then running off or something. I called out to my wife and asked her if she could see the boy, but she couldn't see him either. I looked under the car to see if he had been crazy enough to hide under there, but he wasn't there either. I decided to crouch down behind the car next to mine to see if he would pop out of his hiding place, but he didn't. I guess he went off somewhere. I got back in my car and put my car in reverse once again. And once again, my rear sensors started beeping. I looked at the screen and I saw the same kid there behind my car. I was startled, but more annoyed. I called out to the naughty child. I quickly shut off the engine and jumped out of the car. I felt for sure that I would be able to catch him out this time, but once again, there was no one behind my car. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was around this point that I began to doubt that the kid was real. It was after midnight and I couldn't see his parents anywhere. It's a bit odd for a 4 to 5-year-old kid to be out here alone without either of his parents looking for him. We were in a parking lot on a busy highway. Why was this kid allowed to run around out here? It didn't add up to me. My wife was looking pretty creeped out too, so I had a feeling that she was thinking the same as me. I asked her to help me out though. I asked her to step out of the car and stand there while I tried to reverse out of the spot. To make sure the kid didn't come out of nowhere. I put my car into reverse for the 3rd time, and for the 3rd time my sensors started beeping, and I could see that little boy crouching behind my car. I asked my wife to grab the kid. I planned on giving his parents a piece of my mind. And she called back to me, "Keep reversing, there's no one here." I didn't know what to do at that point. I didn't want to hit the kid with my car, but I knew the kid wasn't there. I had to go against what my eyes and ears were telling me, and I trusted my wife. I looked away from the LCD monitor and reversed backwards. I was really nervous. I felt for sure that I would feel a bump, and then I would hear my wife scream, but I didn't. I went past the point where I saw the little boy, and I looked at the monitor, and all I could see was the empty road behind me. I was able to turn my car around and face the exit. My wife got in the car, and we began to pull away. I went nice and slow. I was scared of the slim possibility that there was a little boy out here somewhere. I couldn't help how curious I was, though. I had to take a look back, so I decided to look in the rearview mirror. I saw that little boy again, right there where I parked. He was still there, drawing or writing something on the ground. This time he slowly looked away from his drawing and towards my car, and I suddenly felt so scared. I really didn't want to meet eyes with him. I took my eyes off of the mirror and pulled out of the parking lot. I don't know what happened that night, but it's something I'll never forget. My wife and I think that something happened to that boy in that car park. Potentially something fatal. Could a car have hit that child and we were seeing an apparition? Well, that's what we think anyway. Unfortunately, I can't remember the exact location of the car park, but I found some news of fatal accidents in that general area. I think about this incident sometimes when I hear of accidents on the road. Hi, Jay here. Have you heard of Kyabakura? It's a kind of bar that's uniquely Japanese. These bars primarily hire female staff, and their job is to be as attentive as possible to their clientele. Kyabakura comes from the French word cabaret, and the hostesses in the bar do things like light their guests cigarettes, provide beverages, engage with them in flirtatious conversation, and sing karaoke to entertain them. It's almost like a modern version of the geisha, I guess. Contrary to some beliefs, there is no stripping, nudity, or anything else like that, so I'm told. How it works is like this. The client would buy the hostess a drink, and therefore they would be essentially buying their time and attention. The hostesses get a commission on drinks sold, and these drinks have a high markup price, a little like a maid cafe, but the setting is definitely after dark. This is where some clients go to relieve work stress and, sadly, feel wanted. There is a strict no-touching policy, but as you might imagine, these kind of bars can be breeding grounds for infatuations. The wrong signals can and have been read. With that in mind, let's dive into this short experience. Oh, and incidentally, if you guys think that this could be a good theme for a video, just let me know in the comments. I heard this from a hostess at a Kyabakura bar. It's a pretty creepy one. I guess I'll call her Alice. I don't know how we got onto the subject, but we were talking about scary experiences. She told me one night, not too long ago, that she had a creepy experience, and I was all ears. She told me that she had missed the last train home and was forced to get a taxi. She told me that she was really stingy with her money and would have walked if it wasn't for what one of her friends told her recently. She said that a co-worker had been stalked, so she didn't want to run the risk of walking home alone so late. She called a taxi, and it arrived in a matter of moments. I got the impression that Alice was a very cautious woman. She had a good head on her shoulders. When she got in the taxi, the driver asked her, "Where are you headed?" And Alice gave the address of a convenience store close to her apartment. She didn't want to give out her address, plus, she figured that she could get a couple of things at the store while she was at it. It wasn't a long taxi ride, and before she knew it, she was passing by her building. Alice thought to herself, maybe I should have just got off here, half regretting her decision to get dropped off at the convenience store. Just as she was thinking this, the taxi pulled to a stop right in front of her building. Alice froze. She was certain that she asked to be dropped off at the store and did not recollect giving out her building address. She said she never gave out her building address. A couple of awkward seconds go by, and the taxi driver suddenly realizes the mistake he has made, and then he says, "Oh yeah, you said the convenience store, didn't you?" He pulled away, and after a few more stressful seconds, he dropped her off at the convenience store. She left the money and bolted out of the taxi. The following day, she filed a complaint with the taxi firm. The driver knew where she lived, so perhaps he was the one who had stalked her co-worker. I will keep this as short as I can because I really don't have a lot I can say about it. It's all very confusing to me, despite this having happened a long time ago. I have told this one to a couple of friends and family members, and we are all still left scratching our heads, so I'm opening it up to the internet. This happened when I was returning from Shiga Prefecture, which meant that I was going through Mie. I guess that doesn't mean much if you don't know the area, but just think of long, winding mountain roads through forests. It was also night, so it was really dark out. It gets like that in the mountains. I will admit that I was going a little faster than usual. Like I said, it was night, and if I'm honest, I should say that it was late night. I was way behind schedule, and I wanted to get home and get to bed. I was gunning it through these mountain roads. I was making some good time, but then something catastrophic happened. I felt like I hit something, ran something over. Based on the impact I felt, I would say it was no bigger than a basketball or something. Sadly, there are many wild things out in the mountains that could be that size. I screeched the car to a halt, and I pulled off to the side of the road and parked up. I looked back, and I couldn't see anything in the road, and man, that gave me relief. But honestly, I felt like I hit something, so I kept searching. I got on my hands and knees, and I looked beneath the car. I couldn't see anything, but it was dark. I grabbed my phone and activated the torch and shone that bright light under my car. I searched all over, but I couldn't see anything. I double and triple checked the area and found nothing. I didn't think that there was much else that I could do other than get back in my car and head home. It was really weird, and to be honest, I didn't really want to leave because it was all still up in the air. I mean, I definitely hit something. There was no doubt about it. I had to leave though. There was nothing I could do, and no evidence I could gather. I just drove home, completely perplexed. Because I couldn't come to any kind of meaningful conclusion, I forgot about that incident for a while. But I was reminded of it when a friend of mine called me one night. My friend called me regularly, and we would talk about all kinds of things. That night he called me to tell me that he had a similar experience to mine. He said that he was driving through the same mountain passes that I was when it happened. He said that he screeched his car to a halt when he thought he hit something. And just like me, he got out of his car to check, but he couldn't find anything. He said he was reminded of my experience, so he got back in his car and he left. I thought that it was nothing more than a coincidence. I thought that it was more than a coincidence that the both of us had had the same kind of experience, and that got me thinking. Me and my friend, we're both dudes. I just wonder if there was some kind of trap set up out there. Let me explain a little. I wonder if because we were men, we left those mountain roads without issue. I've thought about this for a while, and I think that it was a trap. I think that someone had something on a fishing line or something, and the intention of the trap was to get someone out of their car. At first, I thought that it might be a carjacking thing. I don't have the greatest car in the world, but my friend has a really nice one. He has sunk a lot of money into making it top of the range. So because we both got out of our cars, and we weren't robbed, I think that we can rule carjacking and perhaps robbery out. This is what makes me think that that trap was intended for the opposite sex, and that scares the hell out of me. Naturally, I reported it, but it didn't amount to anything. Damn, the mountain roads at night can be terrifying. I live in a pretty small town, and I have a pretty quiet life, in all honesty. I have an office job, and I work some pretty long hours, so I don't really go out all that much at night. On the night that this experience took place, I got a call from a friend of mine. To be honest, I almost didn't pick it up, but I'm really glad that I did. She had called to say that she needed a ride. I didn't mind. I didn't have any plans. She needed to be picked up from a big supermarket. I guess that she had bought a ton of things, and she didn't want to take all of that on the crowded train home with her. I was happy to help, but it seemed a little late to be shopping. It was around 11 p.m. when she called. I needed a couple of things too, so I headed into the store to meet her. The supermarket was almost empty at that time of night, but it is usually really busy during the day. We got our things, paid, and headed back to the parking lot. I think that it was about midnight at that point. A group of men came out of a nearby game center. It's like an arcade. I think these guys came out because the place was about to close. They headed to their cars while talking to each other and looking over at us. My friend said to me that she wasn't feeling well, and we decided to get going. We pulled out of the parking lot, and a couple of the other cars followed on behind us. That was normal though. It was closing time, and the lights in the retail park were all going out. I noticed that my friend was quiet. I guess that was just because she said she didn't feel well. I looked over at her, and she looked pale. She looked at me and said, "I think I know the guy in the car behind us." I didn't think much of it when she said that. I thought that it was just some coincidence. I went to look in the mirrors to see if I knew him too, and then my friend suddenly said, "Don't look back." I realized why she was so uncomfortable now, and I tried to pull over to let the guy pass, but then my friend snapped at me. She said, "Don't stop the car, whatever you do." I did as she asked, and continued, "That's my ex-boyfriend. If you stop, I'm scared he'll come and try to open the door." Okay, this is serious, I thought. I made up my mind not to drive down highways. I wanted to avoid traffic lights, which would mean we would have to stop. When my car stops, the doors automatically unlock while the car is in drive. So I decided to take the back roads. And man, that was a bad idea. Thinking back on it now, I should have probably gone to a late-night diner or convenience store, somewhere bright with lots of people around. But I think that my friend would have freaked out if I even tried that. So I kept driving down these countryside lanes, the back roads, until my friend calmed down a little. The car behind was following every turn we made. The further we went from the city, the fewer cars were seen on the road with us. It got to a point where it was literally just us. The car behind was speeding up too, forcing me to go faster and faster. I asked my friend, "Why is this guy chasing us?" And she said, "I think I made him really angry. I don't want to stay at my place alone tonight." She then began to cry, and I didn't really get my answer. The situation we were in was getting more and more unnerving. I didn't know how it was going to end, and I didn't want to consider the possibilities. I kept driving. There wasn't much else I could do. But then something occurred to me. I had quite a small and light car, and the car behind was much bigger. What if I went down a narrow road? Maybe that would stop the guy from chasing us. He would be scared to damage his car. I decided to take that risk and turned down the next narrow road I found. I kept an eye on my navigation system to try and find a way back out of there. I didn't want to be stuck down some dead-end road. I needed to keep driving or at least get to someplace safe because I didn't want to send my friend home in the state she was in. I thought about trying the police, but I knew that the police wouldn't do anything about the guy. It seems like they only help after the fact, never before. My friend was sobbing next to me, but she stopped to apologize for getting me into this mess. I mean, I should have sensed something was up. She hadn't ever called me for a ride from a supermarket before. She said she called me because she didn't have anyone else she could turn to. I told her that it was okay. I just wanted to know where I should be driving her. And she replied, "Don't take me back to my house. If we did just lose him, that's where he'll be waiting for me. Can you take me to the train station?" I said that I could. But she could also stay at mine for the night. She vehemently refused. She said she had caused enough trouble. I realized something at that point. The stuff she had bought at the supermarket looked like she had been planning to run away. She even had some camping equipment. I didn't know it was that bad. I didn't fully understand the situation, but I knew one thing. The man who was chasing us was very dangerous, if running away from her life in our town seemed to be her preferred option. She said that she would stay in a hotel that night. She would get off the train far away and lay low. She was going to hotel hop too. Make sure her location changed every now and then. I felt for her, I really did. She said that she felt like he was always watching her, and he knew how to find her. That's just so scary to me. I didn't want to ask about her ex, but I was curious as to why she was so scared of him finding her. I said something like, "He sounds like a real horrible guy," and she replied, "It's not just him who'll be looking for me. It's his group of friends too." That was frightening. Something really bad was going on. I managed to follow the narrow back roads back to the city, and I got her to the station, like she asked. I was confident that he wasn't following us anymore. I felt for sure that he had given up. She got out at the station, and we found out that the next available train would come in at 6 a.m. I couldn't leave her there for that long in the state she was in. I asked her to come with me to a McDonald's. I thought that we could talk things over a little, and I was right. She told me a little more about the situation and that ex of hers. She told me that He didn't take being broken up with very well. He attacked her. He made threats against her friends and family, and tried to use fear to coerce her into getting back with him. He was also convinced that she had been with his friends. He said all this after she found out he had been on a bunch of dating and hookup apps. One of her single friends showed her his profile, and she confronted him. She said that his friends are all a bunch of stalkers like him too. I was shocked and finding it a little hard to follow her story. Personally, I think they could have been as bad as one another with the cheating by the sounds of things. She turned to me and said, "I want you to forget about me, okay? I'm not going to have anything more to do with you." I mean, it's very sad to lose a friend, of course, but equally, I didn't want to get involved with these weird guys and be chased by random men at night. I was feeling conflicted. She began to cry again, and she kept saying, "It's really my fault this time." After dropping her off at the train station and helping her onto the platform with her bags, she turned to me and gave me 10,000 yen and said, "Thank you, I'll always be grateful for tonight." And that was the last time I ever saw her. I had tears in my eyes as I drove home from the station that night, but they felt like they instantly dried up when I noticed a certain car in the lane next to mine. I couldn't believe it. The guy who had followed me earlier was still out here, looking for us. I got goosebumps, but I tried not to make it obvious that I had noticed him. By some miracle, he didn't appear to notice me or my car, and after 4 or 5 pretty frightening minutes, he turned off in a different direction to me. As soon as I got home, I completely crashed out. It was the first time in a long time that I had been awake that late. Despite everything that happened that night, I'm glad that I answered her call. I mean, what might have happened to her? If I didn't, is something I don't want to ask myself. I never heard from her again. Fast forward to 3 months later, and I got a call from my friend's number. I was really interested to see how she was doing, so I answered it straight away. I quickly found out that it wasn't my friend on the other end of the phone. It sounded like someone wasn't even using a phone. By that, I mean it was kind of computer-like. The voice at the other end of the line asked the following question. "Hi, have you heard from my..." The man calling from her number seemed to be polite and friendly, but I knew he was likely one of the guys who was chasing her and me that night. I was a little scared to say anything at first, but then I managed to say, "Actually, I haven't heard from her in a very long time, so sorry I can't help you." "Ah, is that so? Well, then I'm sorry to have bothered you then." And the call ended. I was so scared, even though it wasn't happening to me. I had a way to contact her through a separate messaging app, but I didn't dare use it, just in case one of those guys or her ex had a way of tracking her messages. I hope she managed to start a new life, and although that call was scary, it told me that they hadn't managed to track her down. If you are out there, stay safe, my friend.